3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Nick Lutsko. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I am a songwriter, producer, creator, and star of Gremlins 3: Dawn of Desmond, singer of the Spirit Halloween trilogy, and former president of Halloween. I got my first guitar when I was like 9 years old, so I kind of had a jump on like my peers in middle school. Like I feel like a lot of people get their first guitar like late middle school, early high school, and I had already been playing and writing for a while by the time that I got to high school. So like freshman year, I had my first band. I'd recorded my first album, and we had a lot of success locally playing like the Riverbend Festival and Nightfall and all these things that at the time seemed like this was the easiest thing in the world, because looking back, there was just a novelty to these 15-year-old kids that were playing these bigger shows. And we had people coming to the shows, and we had big lines of people after the shows wanting to buy merch. And I just thought this music thing was the easiest thing in the world, and that I was just destined for stardom. And I ended up realizing that as each year passed, that people were less interested in what the band was doing. In hindsight, I can see it was because I was getting closer and closer to the age that people are normally in bands, and I wasn't aware of the novelty of being such a young artist, playing shows, releasing albums, or whatever. And when I went to MTSU for songwriting, I really had this mentality that any moment now someone was going to discover my untapped genius, and it's just a matter of people kind of swooping in and pointing me where I need to go. And I spent those 4 years not really doing anything. I didn't record any new music, because I always told myself I don't have the money to go into a proper studio and do it right. And then when I finally got a cheap version of Pro Tools, it was, well, I don't know how to do this well enough to do something that's worth putting out. And then when I finally got my arms wrapped around that, I was like, well, I don't have a good microphone, or I don't have the right equipment. And just after years and years of making excuses, I finally graduate and realize, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing for a living, and I really don't have anything to show for what I'm capable of. So I need to just stop what I'm doing and make something that's a reflection of where I'm at in life right now. So I graduated MTSU in 2013, and I had a busted student version of Pro Tools that had like a 12-track limitation. And I recorded a folk record called Heart of Mold with just acoustic guitar and some banjo and mandolin.
Well, the sun skipped town for the winter. My baby's far away across Tennessee. There's so many things I've learned I couldn't possibly remember. Tomorrow is a chasing after me.
And it was just because of the track limitation, I couldn't do like full band production. So it was just a stripped down kind of Americana version of what I normally do. And I recorded that record, and I printed like 300 copies, and I got in my 2012 Kia Sorento, and I drove all over the country just playing random coffee shops, really just set up and played for tips everywhere I went. And I think that whole experience was eye-opening, that like I don't need to drive to Chicago to play for 3 people, that I could play to 3 people any night in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it really just kind of like made me refocus what I was doing, come home, focus on the home base, my hometown. And I moved back in with my parents, and I used that money that I'd made from that tour from Heart of Mold and got an updated software, Logic, and I recorded my second album. And really that whole era was me just playing shows, pouring all the money that I made from doing music back into kind of like building what I was doing. I formed a band, started playing shows, and just slowly started kind of building a fan base in Chattanooga. I think my new plan of attack was like, I want to get to a point where I'm selling out shows in Chattanooga before I really focus on anywhere else. And as I was in the midst of doing all of that, I was getting married. I was moving out of my parents' home, and I was like, okay, I've spent a few years here where all the money I make just goes back into trying to grow this music thing, and I need to get to a point where I can actually like pay bills and pay a mortgage and whatever else. As I was trying to get creative and figure out ways to do that, I, on a whim, recorded an unsolicited 15-second theme song for a Tim Heidecker produced election special starring Vic Berger for Super Deluxe. And I tweeted it at them in the middle of the night, and I said, I don't know if you guys need a theme song, but I went ahead and made one. And Tim and Vic reached out the next day. They said they loved it. They decided to use it. They asked me to do one for their follow-up election special for the DNC. And that was my foot in the door at this company called Super Deluxe, who has gone the way of the dinosaur, but they basically made these viral videos for a few years. And I just reached out to them. I said, hey, listen, I'm trying to do music full-time, and I kind of strive to be a little bit of a musical chameleon and shapeshift and can do different genres and different voices and whatever. And anything that you guys think you could use music for, I would love to be your guy and try that out. This guy, Jason, who ended up being my producer there, reached out not that long after and said, Donald Trump's tweets have been especially emo today. Do you think you could turn his tweets from the last 12 hours into an early 2000s pop punk emo song?
I am being viciously attacked with lies and smears. I think it's a disgrace, and I say that, and I say that.
And I went through a full-blown pop punk phase. Blink-182 is my favorite band. In middle school, I had the Tom DeLonge Fender Strat in my closet that I hadn't touched in a decade. I pulled that thing out, and I just was like on a mission. I wrote this song. It was the very first emo Trump tweets song. Sent that back within like, I don't know, 5 or 8 hours, and they were into it. And that was just kind of off to the races. I did a series of emo Trump videos for them, and then I kind of pitched this idea of like, rather than taking people's tweets, let's take people's speeches. And that was my first foray into like video editing and matching like the indie folk Alex Jones was the one that really popped off the most.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people. They're a bunch of Christian murderers, scum. They're one giant death factories keeping babies alive and selling their body parts.
You know, I'd always thought that I'd move to a bigger city to do what I do, but I think like sending that unsolicited theme song to Tim Heidecker and Vic Berger was kind of the first time that I had, you know, landed a job that didn't involve needing to go anywhere. And that was just the first of many. Literally every job I've ever had, I've never had to go anywhere. You know, when Super Deluxe shut down, I was trying to figure out what my next move was, and I was really sick of making those types of videos. It just wasn't really fun anymore, and I wasn't getting paid to do it. And I did do like a few more like emo Trump type, like shorter, like soundbite type things for Twitter. I have a very specific memory of Trump bragging to Fox News about him passing this cognitive test where he just kept repeating woman, man, camera, some random sequent chain of words. And I sat down to kind of like put music behind it and do something with it. And I just was immediately so bored. And I was like, I've done this too many times. This isn't even like funny anymore. I'm sick of this guy. Right at that time, I'd realized that Chrissy Teigen had unfollowed me on Twitter. I don't know why she was following me, I guess from one of the earlier emo Trump videos. And I got to give credit to my bandmate, John Elliott. He was like, why don't you write a song about that instead? Because I was kind of venting to him about how I was, 10 seconds into this new Trump song, and I was already sick of it. So that's what I did. I wrote a really quick song about how Chrissy Teigen unfollowed me on Twitter and how it ruined my life.
It's been a hard year. Don't need to list the reasons why. But I can sincerely say the greatest moment of my life was when Chrissy Teigen followed me on Twitter. But I took it for granted and posted the dumbest shit imaginable.
It was really the first real attempt at putting something out that was, a comedy song essentially with my face attached to it, and realizing just how people reacted to it was something that I hadn't experienced, especially being a guy who could spend years writing a song and put it out and not ever really see any real reception. It was really surreal to write something very quickly, shoot a video really quickly, like literally not even overthink anything, just go with my first instinct with every move, put it out, and then have like this snowball effect that led to all these other massive moments in my career. It was a major green light that maybe this is something that I should put more energy into. Yeah, Chrissy Teigen was the first time that I'd shot my own video, and that like it was literally me placing my cell phone in front of my face and playing the song. And I got down on all fours and pleaded for her to refollow me. But yeah, it was, you know, we done some music videos for some songs off my record Swords, and did a video for Grinning Like a Barracuda. And they were all, you know, very intentional, and, you know, there's a lot of production value. And again, from the songwriting aspect and the video aspect, it was just a major eye-opening moment that like, wow, this doesn't need to be some huge production for it to resonate with people. I mean, it's hard to say, you know, like what works for any other creator, but I do know that like I'd done this record Swords and I'd spent years on it, and some of the songs literally, you know, I would write a verse in February of one year, and I would be like, you know what, I'm in a very specific headspace as I'm writing this part of the song that I'm not in, and I gotta wait for the muse to come back and tell me that it's time to finish the song. And sometimes that doesn't happen for 2 years. I think the songs in the Computer Saga that I was releasing on Twitter was like me sitting down and just being like, I'm gonna write a song in an hour. I don't regret anything that I did with Swords in the way that one worked, but like they're two different ways of creating, and I think both are valid. And it really helped me moving forward to not second guess every little decision, not be as painstaking, and trust my first instinct. So I feel like the one guiding principle in the series of these Twitter songs were, you know, just because I was just following the format that I'd done with the Chrissy Teigen song, which was like write the song, shoot the video, get it out within 24 hours. And when you're working that way, you really don't have a lot of time to like comb over every detail. So like I would do the video and I'd realize typos after the fact, and that would lend to like the whole aesthetic. Like it's a very kind of deranged, sloppy vibe, and I realized that all these things were kind of informing each other. But that was very specific to that project. I released a song earlier this year called Obituary, which was my first foray back into sincere, non-comedic music, and I realized that I'd kind of taken the best of both types of creation, one which is extremely painstaking and can take a long time, another where I'm really just going with the first instinct, and realizing like sometimes like you do need to meditate on something on a day and make sure what you're trying to communicate is, you know, coming through clearly, but like you do not need, or I do not need to spend weeks or months or years building something, taking it apart, rebuilding it again. Like I think it's better just to kind of like push through that initial creative burst and get something out there. So I did the Chrissy Teigen video, and I did a couple more. I think I did a song about my cats pissing all over my bed, and then I did I Want to Be at the RNC, which that really was the moment. I don't know if I'm like supposed to talk about this, but after that one took off, I had like Saturday Night Live reach out, and they asked me to submit like an audition tape, which obviously they didn't care for. But it was a really surreal thing, whereas like weeks earlier, I would have never proclaimed that I was a comedian. And then Saturday Night Live was reaching out and wanting to see what else I could do. So it was just like a moment where I was like, okay, maybe this is where I should be focusing my attention for a little while and see what else can happen. So when that didn't work out, it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to start my own. Obviously, I've kind of built this whole mythology surrounding my own version of Saturday Night Live. But I did get to a point where I was like, I'm just going to start putting out stuff every week, or I'm going to attempt to, or at that time. And then I realized, oh, wait, I have to have a good idea to do that. And I didn't have any. and Spirit Halloween was opening. It started, I mean, it's so dumb, as many of the songs that seem to connect with people are, but the whole concept just started from a theme song for Spirit Halloween that really has nothing to do with Spirit Halloween. It's really informed by just like me being a weirdo, and the song is about me wanting to make money off a theme song rather than really drawing any attention to what the store is or why you should shop there or whatever. And it was just, you know, a weird time where, you know, it's a global pandemic and everything is closing down, and meanwhile Spirit Halloweens are rising and popping up everywhere. It was just this weird moment in time that was kind of funny to me. And yeah, I think I started talking about in the RNC song about grandma's basement, and grandma told me not to go down there. And I really just started like working in this little, you know, nods to my fictional grandmother. And it was just in the comments where I realized like those were the details that people were really hanging on to. From there, I just kind of built this increasingly bizarre through line, connecting all of these seemingly unconnected songs through this absurd storyline. I had a collection of clips on my phone of me being frightened by the animatronics already on my phone with no real purpose. And that, truthfully, is probably the big bang of the Spirit Halloween song of like, I need something to write about, and I have all these clips of me being frightened by animatronics. And that is another thing that I attempted to do for my Saturday Night Live audition video, is I went there with a whole scripted monologue, and the goal was to be continually interrupted by the animatronics, but I couldn't time it right, and it was just, and there were people trying to shop, and it was just very uncomfortable, and it didn't. I don't think I have that footage anywhere, but that's kind of what bled into the Spirit Halloween theme song. I don't think I ever shared that with anybody. I think that was definitely a happy accident. I really can't tell you what my creative process is. I think it's really pretty subconscious. I'm always like putting pieces together after the fact and realizing, like Haunted by the Ghost of Ernest P. Worrell. Like, I was obsessed with Ernest as a kid, and of course he would somehow end up in a song of mine. And I think you could kind of look across the board and say the same thing for Gremlins. And I don't know. I don't want to take inventory on all of my songs right now, but I'm sure there are other examples. I've always loved horror, and I wish I had like a very specific thing that I could draw it back to. I think the closest thing I have to that is I remember my parents would not let me watch Nightmare Before Christmas when I was young, and I kind of obsessed over it. Like, I remember I stayed at this like after school daycare type thing, and there was like me and like 3 other kids, and the rest of them were girls, and the woman would let us pick a movie to watch, and she didn't know I couldn't watch Nightmare Before Christmas, and I would pick it every single time, but no one else ever wanted to watch it. But I like the fact that I couldn't watch it just really like made it so much more fascinating. I remember like every time I went to Blockbuster, I would rent either Ernest Scared Stupid or The Dark Crystal. And I mean, The Dark Crystal isn't a horror film, but it's very horrific for, you know, a very young child. For about a decade, every Halloween I've tried to do something. You know, my band has done the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack at shows, and I've done EPs and videos, and I've tried to do something special every Halloween for the past 10 years. And I've never really thought about why, other than I just love horror and I love dressing up. I don't know. Hopefully there's an answer in there. I don't know. I mean, I've always loved Gremlins, not to like an unhealthy degree. I definitely lean into that quite a bit. But I going back to what I was just talking about, I think Gremlins is a great example of like, you know, that's like, it's rated PG. It probably shouldn't be rated PG, but like, I know that I was watching that when I was very young, and it probably left an impression, and probably is embedded into this, you know, part of my DNA and why I'm drawn towards horror. I mean, I don't know. I think the reason that one connects with a lot of people is because like every single franchise has been run into the ground and rebooted time and time again at this point. It is really confounding that there hasn't been more with the Gremlins franchise. And I think, you know, if I had to pinpoint it to one thing specifically, I was listening to the Poundcast with DJ Doug Pound and Brett Weinbach, and they had a bit in there where they were going through the alphabet and trying to invent new horror films, one for each letter. And I think they got to G and did Gremlins versus Jason. And that really cracked me up, just the idea of Gremlins occupying another character's world. And then, from there, it's like, well, about Gremlins in Star Wars and Gremlins in Jurassic Park. And obviously, I kind of took that ball and ran with it. So I maybe owe some royalties to DJ Doug Pound and company. Yeah, I mean, living in Chattanooga, it's weird because I feel like I'm very, I'm outside the circle of, film and television. But it's great in that I'm able to be close to my parents and my wife's parents. And there's nothing that I can't do here that I would need to go. At least so far, there's nothing that I've needed to travel somewhere else to do. And the greatest thing about it is I'm making LA money living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which goes a lot further. That's not like a great creative answer, but that's definitely a plus. I think for me, just throwing things at the wall and trying things, like if I didn't do that 15-second unsolicited song for Tim Heidecker and Vic Berger, like it literally wouldn't have led to all these other things. And the thing is, like, if I hadn't taken, a dozen swings that didn't hit before then, like, I think it's just a matter of like, keep trying. I think a lot of people maybe fail at something 3 or 4 times and they're like, I'm going to take the message that this isn't for me. But it's like, just trying things that like are outside the box. I think that's ultimately how I got to where I am. On one hand, I'm extremely lucky and I really can just like look at all these points, and I think anyone could look and see there's a straight line from this theme song that I did for Tim and Vic Berger that led to Super Deluxe, that led to me doing some stuff for Netflix, that led to the stuff I did during the pandemic, that led to this, and blah, blah, blah. But like what they're not seeing are the hundreds of times that I tried something that no one saw or no one cared about. And there's really like I've been able to do all of that just from like my basement on the internet. And like there's never really been a need for me to go immerse myself in a new town. And I think rather than like thinking that you need to be where everything is happening, it's just a matter of like trying to find ways around the gatekeepers and just trying to like forge your own path and pray to God you get through. Yeah, well, so I started doing a Saturday Nick Lutsko on YouTube at the beginning of this year, really because I have 100,000 subscribers, and I was trying to find a way to engage with that audience in a way that kind of like, like people maybe are introduced through Super Deluxe, and maybe they've seen some of the songs that I made initially for Twitter, like I Want to Beat the RNC and Spirit Halloween. But like there's a whole mythology to like this persona that I've created in the band that I perform with. And I thought that like an hour-long show that featured live music and some pre-tape stuff like is a great way to kind of like get a taste of like everything we're doing. Like it shows like what you might get a taste of at a live show and what you might see on Twitter and whatever else. If you're not on, a lot of people follow me on YouTube aren't on Twitter. The thing that I didn't really realize is the YouTube algorithm isn't really a fan of these long form videos. So we spend all this time and energy on these things that not a whole lot of people watch, but like people that are watching them really enjoy them. And the hope is that we can do that long enough and build enough of an audience to where we can maybe use that as a jumping off point to do something. I don't know. I don't want to in a more official capacity. Yeah, it's been really difficult having like this comedy persona and then the more sincere music that I put out coexist and share the same name and discography and everything else. And like the way that I've kind of justified the live shows, when we started doing them initially, like we have a whole, subset of people on YouTube that maybe are only familiar with my comedy stuff, but then on Spotify, the more sincere stuff does a lot better. And truthfully, while the more sincere stuff is far closer to me as a person, there's also like a character in that as well. And like the way that I've looked at forming or putting together a set list of a show that blends like comedy into non-comedy and like trying to find like a cohesive through line. The way that like I have justified it is looking at all of my favorite films and television and whatever else and realizing like there have been like great dramas that have hilarious moments and fantastic comedies that can make you cry. And like, I think life is just a mixed bag of everything. And that's kind of what I feel like we're doing with the live show and with, my discography as a whole. And there's part of me that feels like maybe there's a reason no one's done this and blended these two. But we haven't had many complaints. I think a lot of people have had a lot of fun at the shows, and we never really feel like we're losing the audience at any point in particular. One of the coolest things about taking these songs and doing them live is we announced towards the end of 2021 that we were going to be doing these shows at Shuba's in Chicago, and we announced the show, and it sold out almost immediately. They added a second show. It also sold out, and they moved us to the Lincoln Hall, which is double the capacity. And they added a second night, and then that night almost sold out. But we sold almost 1,000 tickets between two nights. It was just this mind-blowing. When you struggle to sell a couple hundred tickets in your hometown, and then you sell that many tickets in a city you've never played before, it was an extremely exciting time and humbling experience. But we really didn't know. That was really the first time we've ever done a lot of these songs live, and there was, I had no clue how they'd be received. But the coolest moment perhaps of my career was like going and playing those songs and realizing that like everyone was singing along to the non-comedy songs. And I think that's been like the biggest gift from all this, that like the comedy stuff I've done has almost been a little bit of a gateway drug to the more sincere stuff that I write. I think it could be easy to look at what I do, and I mean, I really haven't heard anyone say this out loud, but it could be easy to think that maybe I am suppressing a part of myself to pursue this new thing. But like, I just love creating things, and I've always loved comedy. I'm just as, if not more, I am more fulfilled doing what I'm doing right now, just because there are people who are lovingly receiving it. That's not all of it, but it's definitely a plus to be making things and knowing that people out there are going to listen to it critically and appreciate it or whatever. And of course, I intend to flex all the muscles that I have, which aren't many. I'm not implying. I mean, I have a few very big muscles. And I'm going to take some time. My goal is to, I'm doing this October project. I'm releasing a new song every week in October. But my next big thing is I want to take some time and really prioritize getting out the next album, which will be a follow-up to Swords, which is funny because I've released 2 albums and 2 or 3 EPs since then. But I compartmentalize everything in my discography between the 2 versions of me. So I do have a little bit of musical schizophrenia happening, I think. Honestly, I think it happens all the time, this feeling that like this is the one that's going to, go viral. And I think anytime I've ever had that feeling, it's not. It's like done worse than average. And to the point where anytime I get a feeling like I really think this one could go viral, I get bummed out a little bit, just because for whatever reason that feeling is always accompanied by it not going viral. And I just released a song called Living Dead in DC that I don't think could have been more topical.
Living dead in Washington, D.C. Chilly rotted corpses of old democracy. Gallivanting past the average life expectancy. Loaded stinking corpses on Washington, D.C.
And it's had a nice, modest reception. But everyone I played it for was like, "Oh, dude, this is the one. This is gonna blow up." And every time I heard it, I was like, "Yeah, no, it's not," because you just said it out loud. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I remember doing a song about Tiger King for Netflix during the pandemic, and I remember just feeling like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be this is going to be bonkers. And then it got like, I don't know, 1,000 views or something. Like, it did not do well. So who knows? I don't know. Another thing is, it's worth saying is, like, I Want to Be at the RNC. I was like, and Spirit Halloween, both. I was like, this might be the dumbest song I've ever written. Like, the lyrics are incoherent. I really don't know what the point is. It's just nonsense. And I feel like the more I feel that way, typically the better received it is. So that's kind of, I feel like, my lane. I think growing up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I'm surrounded by people that I love that don't agree with me. And I think that has influenced how I, how candid or how harsh I am with some of my messaging. But I also don't feel like that's an incredibly intentional choice. I think it's something that's just like a part of me, and like it's just my default way of writing. Yeah, I wrote the original Spirit Halloween theme song totally unsolicited. Again, like, I'd had some success doing that sort of thing at that point, but I had no ambitions of Spirit Halloween getting on board, especially because of the Jeff Bezos turn by the end. Yeah, I was very surprised. They got in touch. They did send me some money on Venmo, which was very cool. And they basically said, like, we love the song. We don't really feel like we can do a lot with it because of the turn it takes at the end, but we would love to pay you to do another one that doesn't feature Jeff Bezos as prominently. I mean, he is there subtextually, or not subtextually, but, he's represented in another way. No, yeah, I mean, that was the very first thing of like, okay, if I'm going to do this again, you guys got to kind of give me free reign to be as weird with it as I possibly can. Because the second it just feels like a Spirit Halloween commercial, then like it's no longer funny, it's no longer effective, and it's going to damage what's come before. So like they reached out about the second one. They said they had this hashtag Unleash Your Spirit, and they wanted it to be fun, and they wanted to like celebrate how people were going to be having Halloween parties during the pandemic. And then my head immediately went to, I was like, oh, what if I just filled my house with all their animatronics and threw my own Halloween party? And that sounded very fun to shoot. And it's probably one of my favorite videos I've done. Just having like a concept that was very fresh. It's so different from the first one, and that's exactly what we did for the third one. Is each one just got like kind of like bigger and more expansive than the one before it. And yeah, I there's been things that have come across, that I've been approached about that just have not. I didn't feel like I could really do it from like an organic way without it feeling very manufactured, and I've politely declined. Spirit's been pretty awesome and letting me do pretty much whatever I want for those videos. Other than they made me change Millions March demanding my execution. They made me change to Resignation. Yeah, just keep at it. And that's what I say to any, aspiring creative. Like, my little brother's doing filmmaking now, and it's funny, like, I'm seeing a lot of parallels on my journey of graduating college and then figuring out like, how am I supposed to make a living doing this? And it's like, you're gonna have to just keep working and finding ways to try new things, and like, just don't stop. Like, most people will hit a couple bumps in the road and be like, you know what, I could just go get a day job and never have to think about any of this. And they're more comfortable doing that. But if it's really worth, creating something that you can, build a career on, like, then just keep at it and don't give up. And whatever the not generic way to say that is, just AI me, make it sound articulate.
3, 2, 1.